I'm really excited to have Natalie Miller in studio with me today. Natalie, thank you so much for coming through.
It's great to be here.
Female that I'm having a conversation with, and you and I have had a conversation before, and you've done a hell of a lot in your career, and I'm really excited to unpack that. So I wanted to just start from the beginning. Tell me a bit about maybe varsity days and what career you thought you were going to jump into. And we can take it from there.
Yeah, so funny enough, for today, I actually was a broadcast journalism major. But I interned at CNN, actually in an amazing period of the 20th anniversary. So I was able to meet, a lot of the big guys and Bernard Shaw and all of that crew. But I was not very good, and I happened to end up in a lot of the bloopers. So I decided to move away from broadcast journalism.
Okay, and then where did you move from there?
So I probably didn't make a conscious decision at that time to not go into broadcast journalism. My mom, I grew up in the newsroom with my mom. She actually had her own newspaper. After being editor-in-chief of the local paper for a long time, she started her own.
And where was the local paper? Where did you grow up?
Right outside of Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia. Okay. So I spent a lot of time in that. So it was quite natural for me then to go into journalism. And then I just thought, why not TV? And I did really enjoy my time at CNN. We did long format. It was CNN and Time. And then actually what happened was the producer ended up sort of offering me a job, but it was like kind of that graveyard shift, and yes. I wanted to travel. Okay. So, I was very open and honest with him, and he was kind enough to actually hook me up with the London office. So I was going to actually go there and work, and my friends even got work visas, and then AOL took over Time Warner. Our show was canceled. I got a call. The show is canceled from what was supposed to be my new boss, and I'm traveling the world. And I was like, okay, so maybe I just need to travel.
Exactly.
Yeah, so ended
Probably
up...
the best call you've ever received.
Exactly.
Okay. Else you would have been stuck in London with that terrible weather.
Did end up going back to the UK, but only for a short period of time. But ended up actually traveling around Southeast Asia with friends, and then ended up in Australia. Okay. Fell in love with Sydney, traveled on my own for a while up the coast. And, my dad had said, we have family friends. If you're broke, show up at their door. And something like that happened. And I ended up showing up at their door, and they were amazing. And long story short, they took me out to dinner the first night and kind of said, well, what do you want to do with your life? Like, what are you gonna, because I had just graduated university.
How old were you then?
So it was, I guess, 2020, I wish. Okay. 2001, okay. I graduated from Syracuse University, and went traveling there. And I think I moved to Australia after my trip in early 2002. So yeah, long story short, ended up going out to dinner with them, and they're like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. I want to do something with meaning and helping people and doing things with other cultures. And I did this amazing thing called Semester at Sea during university, and it really exposed me to the world. And I wanted a little adventure and to do something meaningful. And so they actually introduced me to an organization called Operation Smile. Yeah. And I went back and applied, and I was with them for about 12 years. So
with Operation Smile, I know initially you landed up in Kenya. Do you want to talk through that? I mean, it's an incredible initiative. We know about it in South Africa. It helps a lot of children with cleft palates. Do you want to talk through that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, Operation Smile, it's a global medical nonprofit, and it's now, I think, in over 70 countries around the world. At that time, I became a mission coordinator. So we were basically helping to coordinate medical volunteers to do large-scale medical missions in various countries. And, my brother joked that I would be like, carrying the bags for the doctors and so forth. But actually, it was quite insane. I mean, we were working with hospital directors, ambassadors, sometimes queens, presidents, and so forth. And so I worked a lot in Asia for them, and then in even Latin America. And then I did, at that time, only in Africa, only Kenya had a foundation. And so I led a 4-site medical mission to Kenya. That was in 2002, mid-2002. And, the stereotypical American fell in love with.
Did you adopt any children at that point?
Not at that point. Not at that point. I have since, but not at that point. At that point, I was 22, 23-ish. But I did see the need, and I also fell in love with the culture. And so I ended up with the country manager in Kenya putting together a proposal for the organization to open up South Africa as a regional base, since we have such a top tier medical and business community, and yet there's still so much need around us. So they said no, and I then resigned. One of my surgical volunteers, like, come do this course called Health Emergencies in Large Populations in Hawaii, and then we can surf in the mornings and surf in the evenings. And so I did, but the night before I left, OpSmile called and said, look, if you move to China for us for a year, then you can try to open up South Africa after. So I did. So.
And your experience in China, how was that?
Amazing. I mean, China's fascinating. And actually, my brother and dad are both speak Mandarin, and my nieces, and very, very into China.
What was your role in China? What did you do? What were you spearheading there?
So, as Operation Smile does, they decided that, so I guess, I'm not sure I should be saying this on camera, but for quite a few years, they hadn't gone through all the right processes in order to bring medical cargo. So we bring scheduled drugs, we bring equipment, we bring everything needed for a medical mission into countries. And we do it through going through the channels of the Ministry of Health and getting approvals to bring, everything in. So long story short, we needed to, at that time, go back through the channels in China.
Processes in place.
Yeah, so basically the SFDA, or the Food and Drug Administration for China, we had to get the approvals, and they thought for some reason that an American who didn't speak Mandarin and who had never stepped on mainland China would be an ideal person to do that. So there I was, moved to China. Basically, they were like, get off the plane in Shanghai and go to the train station and take a train to Hangzhou and then find a place to live and then, fly to Beijing and get this approval for us.
In your upbringing. So a lot of what you've done is very much on your own, figure stuff out. Was there anything that defined that as a youngster where maybe mom said, just figure it out? You obviously weren't spoon-fed a lot of the times, because that is exactly it. So it's jumping into, even in Africa, doing business in Africa and jumping into China, you have to just figure stuff out.
Yeah, I've thought about it a lot because I have 2 young children, and I want to do a lot the same, but a lot different, right?
Yes.
Like we all do. Look, I have a great family, great parents, very supportive, but they also do believe in independence. And, we were joking, actually, I was just back in the States, and by the time I think I had my 6th birthday at month sleepaway camp. So I was the youngest. I had petitioned the camp to allow me to go with my older brother, who's 3 years older. And somehow, or some reason why, my parents actually let me go. I got like special permission to go for 2 weeks, and then if I wanted to extend, and my parents said that, day one, I called and said, I'm staying for the month.
Exactly.
But I mean, a lot of that, and then, my dad, who is very straight-laced, he, Harvard, Yale Law School, Oxford, very typical lawyer, he knew me enough to, at graduation, say, don't worry, Nat, your job hasn't been invented yet.
Okay.
So I think there was a lot of belief that, like, I would create and figure it out. Yeah.
So in China, how long were you there for? And then what happened after that?
Yeah. So I was in Hangzhou for about 6 months, something like that. And traveling a lot during that to different medical mission sites and obviously to Beijing to get this approval, which in the end we did, which was
well done,
miraculous. But then I continued to do work in China, but also in India. During the rest of that year. I actually moved then back to DC and worked on sort of China, India, and starting to make inroads into South Africa. That was 2005.
Okay.
So yeah.
And then moved back to South Africa, or what made the move to South Africa?
Yeah, so at that stage, I'd never been to South Africa. Okay. So when I proposed the organization in, I guess that was 2004, to open up South Africa, I had actually never been there. And I just, I heard about it, read about it, knew that it was like, this business and medical hub. And at that stage, we were going into countries, but we needed to create the foundations as self-sustainable. So we had to be able to raise the money for all the work we were doing in country, with a little help from the outside. But for me, I mean, when they finally said yes, so that was, before I left for China, the idea was, okay, I move or I do a couple fact finds. So I did come here twice in 2005 before actually moving in January 2006. So I moved in 2006. I literally did a fundraiser because I knew Operation Smile was super frugal and they would give me no money to start up the foundation, no place to live, none of that. So
how did you do that? Because I think that's one of the biggest challenges I find with NGOs, specifically in South Africa, is just fundraising and being able to be self-sufficient.
Yeah, it's a journey. I mean, we spoke about previously, fundraising is in some ways a mindset, but it's also about there's rules that are super important to follow, like diversify revenue streams, don't be dependent on one source. We've seen with the crashing of USAID and all of that, how those that have been solely dependent on an entity will falter, right? So, for me, it was a learning game. When I was in China, I had to do a little bit of getting free hotel rooms for some of our employees and volunteers. That was I started out being please, will you, maybe, can you, and learn to be no, actually, we will give you the opportunity to,
to partner with us, to partner, we add proper value to the communities.
And we are changing the lives of your children, and so forth. So it was a process, but I must say when I moved in 2006, I literally, so the fundraiser before, my mom was amazing. She got this venue on the Potomac River in Old Town, Alexandria, right outside of DC, donated. I had previously worked on the Hill, so worked with congressmen and senators. Several of them came. I got the health attaché of South Africa there. I had a lot of friends and stuff that helped me, and some people from the OpSmile organization helped me. And we raised about $40,000 that evening. And we utilized that to start the foundation. So, By the time we came here, amazing entities actually provided, a lot of in-kind support. So yeah, we had, before SAA went into the red, we had free flights by SAA. We had free hotel rooms for our volunteers by Protea Hotels. We had office space donated free of charge by Grant Thornton for years in the middle of CBD. We had all the accounting done there. We were a full client pro bono with Saatchi and Saatchi. So later I became a fundraising consultant. And one of my biggest learnings that I try to share is, people look down on in-kind, or like my board that I built up over time here used to say to me, Nat, your time's worth more than this like 4,000 Rand or 7,000 Rand, thing you're trying to get free. And I'm like, no, that's not the point, Mayhole. Like, how did you come on board? You came on board because slowly you gave things that were very easy for you to give, exactly, like in kind. Then you fell in love with the organization. We got you involved, and now you became a cash donor. Like, most of our partners started as in kind and became, cash donors. So it's a process, but you have to make them, like, take them on the journey with you, I think.
How long were you with the Smile Foundation in South Africa for?
So just to clarify, Smile Foundation and Operation Smile are two different organizations. Yeah, Smile Foundation, we actually did our first medical mission together in Mpingeni. We did a Smile Foundation and Operation Smile mission, and they do amazing work. But Operation Smile, so I moved in 2006 here to start up South Africa, and we opened up, over the next 2-3 years, we actually opened up 5 countries. So, neighboring countries. When I moved, I made a point of saying, we want to raise our money locally. So I didn't take any money from the States. I literally had the UK board pay my salary. And then basically we built up everything locally.
And be self-sufficient from a South African perspective.
South African perspective, but also when we went to Madagascar, we fundraised locally. We have an amazing entity now. Super proud of them. They've been around since 2008. They're doing incredible things around the country. We raised 100%, more than 100% of our first year budget in DRC year 1, Malawi. So all these countries where people think you can't raise funding.
What is the difference there? So, I mean, if there's learnings for any boards of NGOs, and what could they do differently? And I know you've done a course, I think you were at Oxford, and maybe talk about that, and then just give some insight to maybe what boards need to do to diversify their funding.
Yeah, I mean, it's a deep question, right? Yeah. I mean, sometimes I think nonprofits quickly put together a board of the biggest names they can, and they think then that brings credibility, which in some cases it does. It doesn't necessarily bring the passion and the fundraising with it, because some people can sit on a board, but they don't add massive value. They're not raising the funds. They're not. So what we did was really, and as we could develop boards around the continent, is first let them show their passion. Like most of our board members for years were involved before they came onto the board. So that's one thing. And so they've already kind of gotten involved. They've already gotten their companies involved. They've already gotten their friends and high net worth individuals. I also would say is like, so I ended up becoming a fundraising consultant, working with, I fell into it after I left OpSmile. To answer your question, I was with them from 2002. I did a hiatus for business school at Oxford, 09-10. I went back because they paid for some of my business school. I went back until 2013, so late 2013. So overall, it was somewhere around, 11, 12 years. But I think, it's I ended up doing fundraising for like, or not fundraising, but restructuring fundraising departments and sort of change management, I guess, more, for like, Greenpeace Africa, MSF, AMREF, a lot of those, Save the Children, a lot of the INGOs. And the idea is sort of everybody in the organization is a fundraiser, right? So most of the people that came on board as donors or as board members said, the passion of exuding from you guys of the work that you guys are doing is what brought me in, right? Yeah. And then you brought me into it. It was something fun, cool, and worthwhile engaging in. And sometimes I think we leave our donors at a distance.
They just contribute financially and that's it. So they don't feel like they're part of the organization.
Yeah. So there's obviously so much more to it, but I think it's about, there was an organization I consulted for, and that had this like, we eat what we kill mentality. Yeah. And so these poor fundraisers, like, were supposed to basically raise their own salaries and more. And it's just like, you're doing amazing things as an organization, yet that's what they have in the back of their mind, not the incredible work, that you guys are doing. So I think it's just really about like, outlook and strategic view on what fundraising is. It's an enabling.
I think that's an important thing that you've said there. So I sit on the board of Childline, Gauteng. And one of the things that we look at is obviously increase of salaries. And when there's no future funding, it's very difficult to approve things like that. And I think what it is changing the mindset of South Africans to invest in something that is really, really important and looking after the children of South Africa, to then be able to support the people that are doing that type of work.
Absolutely. It's sort of a passion area of mine. I remember when it was a long while ago when I started fundraising here in 2006. And I think there was still a lot of, people were a bit skeptical about nonprofits. They weren't sure where the money was going. There was this view of, and that's why in-kind was so valuable, to like bring them in, in a way that was easy and sort of cheap, inexpensive for them to do, until they saw exactly what they were contributing to and what they were a part of. But I spent a lot of time with my board, and I won't name like the person or the company, but he was the CEO of a large company, and awesome guy, fantastic. And we had many, I would say, discussions or debates. And, he was like, I don't want any of my company's money going to overhead. And I'm like, so at your company, do you not pay salaries? Yeah. Because who do you want to lead? You want efficiency, you want effectiveness, you want strategy. So you want this amazing people, amazing team to do rock star things for this organization, but you don't want to pay them? Yeah. So for me, when I donate to organizations, I say, please put this to overhead. I want the best people in there.
Exactly. Yeah, makes sense. So what happened from there? I think you left the NGO space and went into fintech, which is something very different. So let's talk about that transition. Yeah,
so I think I had decided, OpsMile wasn't a job, it was a lifestyle, it was a family, it was all-encompassing. My real family would joke that that's who I was. So I think I decided, okay, let me go to business school. So at the last few year, or the last year or two before business school, I was trying to generate revenue for the organization, to create a revenue stream so we were less donor dependent. Yes. And I sort of had this view of like, focus on social enterprise. And at that time in, 2008, 2009, it was a less spoken about term, less defined. What is social enterprise? What is social entrepreneurship? What is, but there's a lot of ways to do impact, but with a for-profit model. So long story short, when I decided to go to business school, it was like, okay, how do I kind of get more into this space? And it's why I chose Oxford. We have especially at that time. More business schools around the world have this focus now, but back then, you're dealing mostly with, Wall Street, especially in the States. It's finance focused and so forth. We were still, I don't know, 10%, 12% of the class. I believe our year that were social enterprise focused. Or socially focused. And that was a lot for a business school then. And so I decided, Oxford was a place for me. They shared a building with School Center for Social Entrepreneurship. Unfortunately, I didn't know about the school scholarships because I was too busy opening up DRC and Rwanda. But they have this amazing scholarship program for people in that space to go to the school for those interested and maybe not with the resources. But yeah, anyway, ended up, doing my year there. And I also chose it because it was only 1 year compared to 2-year business schools. But by the time the year is over, everyone's like, I want more. It was such an incredible year. Classmates from 54 countries. So actually, I'm flying back in 2 months to the UK for our 15-year reunion.
Wow.
And a huge number of us are coming from around the world to be there. We're still a very close class. And I think it just took me into the direction of making an impact, but doing it in a way, where it's sustainable. And so while there, we have these strategic consulting projects, and long story short, the CEO of what was sort of a star fintech back in the day called Zoona. At that stage, it was actually MTZL. He had gone to Oxford, Saïd Business School, and we decided to do a 3-month project with him. We stayed in a cottage behind his house, and we ended up helping him build the agent network and so forth. I then, really fell in love with the model of, banking for the unbanked, pretty much. And it was actually the first internationally VC-funded fintech in Africa. And he's written a good book since, if people are interested, called Fail to Win by Mike Quinn. But, unfortunately, it somewhat imploded. It just got sort of sold off a few years ago. But it was a very powerful lead in the space in terms of money transfer.
What were your greatest learnings being part of that?
That maybe some of the greatest, I still believe there's a huge role for nonprofits, but that economic opportunity, that access, all that can be done through, the for-profit model, is really what Africa and the emerging markets need, right? Yeah. We did money transfer. So, if someone working in Lusaka wanted to send money to their family in the Copper Belt, they could do it by just bringing it to an agent, and they didn't even need a mobile phone. Obviously, things are different now, and most people have mobile phones. But this fintech space is about creating access. So anyway, long story short, ended up going back to them when I left Operation Smile. After a while, I did a few other things. And headed up their expansion and corporate partnerships, which was definitely a very interesting time.
And after that, what was the next adventure?
Yeah, so ended up being headhunted to run a agri-tech company, which was super interesting considering I had not been in the agri space. So it was like a
new founded company, or was it something that had been in existence for a while?
So the guys at Impact Amplifier, Max and Tanner, had basically started Green Fingers Mobile, had a MVP, had created sort of this baseline product and really the long and short of it is creating visibility in the value chain for small farmers and large buyers. So it actually started from work they were doing with Nando's and sort of the small chili farmers they were sourcing from, and how do you create kind of transparency and visibility in both the sharing of inputs on credit, the training that was being done, and so that large buyers could see what their agribusiness clients were doing with the small farmers in their networks. So it was, a very interesting experience. We had to kind of take this sort of MVP and build out a full SaaS platform, migrate existing clients, bring on board new ones. We had to raise funds, and that kind of was the first time I entered into that world of being in the forefront of raising investment.
Yeah.
I had done a lot of mentoring and coaching of early stage companies and getting them prepped for it, but this was my first deep dive into that.
And the team that you work with there, a lot of, because obviously building the tech and everything around that. So what was the team that you were managing at that point?
So that was kind of the difficulty, and what so many early stage companies face is that we had to outsource dev.
Okay.
And when you have to outsource dev, you're in a very difficult predicament, especially in Africa, in that there's no, and this is somewhat controversial, but there's no true venture capital in Africa. I also work in that space. We always say, like, it's more PE. Yeah. There's very few, there are some, but there's very few that are investing in an idea.
Yeah.
Most have to be post-revenue. A lot of the well-known VCs, they're looking at $20,000-$25,000 a month revenue.
Yeah.
That's a lot in Rand. So the predicament for small teams like we were was that we needed to raise a certain amount in order to be able to build our own team, to build our own products. But at the same time, our revenue wasn't high enough to justify the amount of money we need to raise. Yeah. So ended up kind of looking at a merger with a fintech company, which in the end didn't end up happening. And I ended up leaving after meeting my now business partner.
Okay. And what is the now business partner?
Yeah, so we started in 2019, XR Global.
Yes.
So it is a first-to-market virtual and augmented reality training platform.
Amazing.
Fully focused on upskilling youth and workforce. And we've trained more than 125,000 people across Africa, Asia, Middle East, and some of the Balkans.
And any specific industries that you focused on?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues that we definitely face or are guilty of is lack of focus. So because we have this disruptive technology that, although it's being used by 90+% of Fortune 500 companies in the States and Europe, it's very new here in Africa. And so there's so much opportunity in so many different sectors that we've kind of gone with opportunities. I will say we started out and we've primarily been focused on agriculture. So we do a lot with training like both farmers and field extension workers. And
is that just because that's where the relationships have come from?
Yes, to a degree. So we work a lot with like DFIs. Yes. We work with, the likes of GIZ, USAID formerly, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, GAPI in Mozambique. I think basically the customer segment is anyone doing large scale training. Because what virtual reality does, if you can imagine, instead of PowerPoints and classroom learning, where the stats say that nearly 90% of information is lost within 1 week. Wow. 1 week. So even if that is far off, which I don't think it's far off, but even if it was, that is a huge amount of time and money wasted. Virtual reality, on the other hand, immerses you. You can't be on your cell phone like people are every time you're,
Checking
in a classroom setting
or something when you are on virtual training.
Yeah, exactly. You're immersed in it, and it's all 4 learning pathways. You're hearing it. We do everything in local languages, local dialects. We for those that are illiterate, because we do training as well for those that are illiterate, our focus is a lot on the bottom of the pyramid. We do embedded pre and post assessments for quality assurance, and we'll do it in color coded and, talk through, red,
Who's
green,
built that
blue.
for you? Because I think there's also a misconception that, VR training, which I think is the way of the future, not just, for organizations, but schooling and universities and moving into that space. But there is this misconception that it is expensive.
Yes.
And I think maybe talk through that.
Yeah. So, we did it right. I learned a lot from my years with the agri-tech company. Our team is internal, so we build everything internally. You're absolutely right. I think there's a lot of misconceptions, and I've been doing presentations left and right with especially these large entities, even corporates, banks, to demystify disruptive technology, because 1, the idea of development, but 2, the idea of headsets. So, what we do, for example, like we just launched with CARE International and, in one of the countries, USAID, in Mali and Niger, so in West Africa. And in each of those countries, we only launched with 8 headsets. Yeah. But when you take a curriculum, so let's look at a 3 to 4 hour course, a classroom course, right? That can be done in around 30 minutes in virtual reality. Okay. It depends, but that's an average, right? So if you can do a 3 to 4 hour course in 30 minutes, you can put 10 people per day per headset. That's 80 people per day with the 8 headsets, right? So it depends on how our clients are rolling out, because we do start to finish. We do design, we do co-creation storyboards. We go out and film because people like to see themselves in it. We then build, doing Scrum. So, making sure that they see progress throughout the whole time. Once it's done, we put it onto our headsets and our platform, and then we hand deliver those headsets and train their facilitators. Yeah. We have a lease to own model for headsets. So after a 24-month lease, they own the headsets for sustainability. And, our clients are rolling out, for example, a DFI that we work a lot with in Mozambique, Gappy, they have container hubs across rural areas. And so they have headsets in each of those container hubs, and the youth rotate in and out.
On a specific training course, how long will it take from start? So like this is the concepts of what we're wanting to build until rolling out those headsets. What is that lead time?
So I always want to say 3 months, because we can it obviously depends on the extent of the content, right? So how much are we actually putting into virtual reality? But if we're using the average of like this 3 to 4 hour training, 30-minute VR, with travel, with the filming, with the build out, and so forth, we can do it in 3 months. It depends obviously on the client as well. So we need approvals throughout. And sometimes there's delays in that. We need to be able to film, in Niger, we need a government permission to film. So sometimes it ends up taking 5 to 6 months, but we can do it much quicker.
And then are you accredited with any organizations for training competencies that employees can then get from that?
It's a good question. So our plan is always to build basically a VR content hub. Let's say to be, the stereotypical, early stage company, the Netflix of VR, right? So not only having to disperse or enable access to our own content, but others' content. However, what we've been kind of doing, just because that's how things have gone is primarily customized training.
Yeah. And that's what pays the bills.
Right.
So people are paying you for what they want.
Everybody wants their own, right? Every company wants their own, every bank wants their own, every, nonprofit, everybody wants their own training. We are starting to experiment with some already created content. So we're working with Stellenbosch University on some STEM biology training. So more of the education side. We've been having some very interesting talks with the Ministry of Education in Malawi. Very impressive. And they basically want to train all their teachers using VR, and then have each teacher bring a headset back to the schools. And what's interesting about that is you'd think, okay, should we start with STEM, like science, math? And they're like, actually, so many of our students haven't seen the beauty of their own country.
Wow.
So why don't we take them on a virtual field trip to the game parks or to Lake Malawi? How amazing. Yeah. You're basically opening the world to these students that maybe
will never be able to leave their little town.
Yeah, we can take them to the Great Wall of China, the Louvre in Paris. Yeah. This is what VR opens up, right? Yeah. We're talking to a large company, or we introduced this large company to the idea a few years ago. And I think, I've seen here, although all the big companies are using VR for their internal training for obvious reasons, dramatically increases knowledge retention, decreases training time, enables decentralized learning at scale. I think we're a bit slower sometimes in Africa to kind of, move in these directions. But talking to a large company, and every employee of a certain level has to go to a factory as part of the expense of that, the distraction of that, the similar with the Asian Development Bank. So we can take them virtually. Right?
Saves a hell of a lot of money. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And think about onboarding in large companies, right? Many times they do once a month onboarding. So if you're hired the day after, you have to wait a month to get training. Instead, you can put a headset on. The CEO can talk directly to you, the head of legal, the head of this, the head of that. You can teleport into the field, see what is done on a daily basis. It completely transforms the
way of learning. Absolutely.
So it's about, I think this misconception is that it's expensive because there is a content creation cost, which is actually like the hardware side is negligible. I mean, it's a lot less than people think, especially with our lease to own model. But it's the cost efficiencies that it brings to the companies and to organizations that people just, aren't understanding yet.
Yeah.
And I think they're coming along. Like there's a lot of people that we reached out to in the early days, half a decade ago, that are coming back to us now.
So the conversation definitely is changing.
Definitely changing.
Yeah. And I think there's a need with the younger generation that you can't ignore that. That is how they will learn, and that is how they're absorbing information. So you need to pay attention.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things we're doing now in Mozambique is gamified learning, right? And I mean, just on the agri space, there's so much concern, so much discussion around the fact that the age of farmers is just getting older and older because we're not making it exciting for the younger generation. Now, who's going to sustain this continent if we don't have farmers, But there's ways to do it that attracts them and interests them. But I would say what's interesting to us is it's not only been the youth. We've trained in the 80s, people in their 80s. We were doing some work in Rwanda.
Watching people in their 80s on a headset. It's
amazing. They're like, I think, more floored, right? I mean, and they're just like, kind of, wow, I'm getting this opportunity, and they're grasping it and they're hearing it and they're seeing it. I mean, one Rwandan trainee said, we're finally seeing what we've been told to learn.
Do you think AI helps you a lot in terms of translating material? So you don't necessarily need to have people who speak the language but you would need someone to proofread it, because are you actually saying what you should be saying? So how has that impacted your business?
It's very interesting because I think we're in the precipice of this, right? Like there's AI is doing a lot in our space, and we're trying to utilize it more and more. If anyone's interested, we'll do a very low cost pilot. We really want to do this. We have an amazing lead developer, a female, who is like an AI, VR, AR expert. And we want to do this like HR onboarding that's AI led. And anyway, we've been talking to a few of our existing customers about engaging with some proof of concepts here. But we're using it, yes, for languages. The funny thing is, we still are doing audio for a lot of the dialects. So, I mean, in some of these countries, we're doing 5 languages, right? It just depends on who the trainee is. I think a lot of the issues with the large scale trainings happening by organizations in the fields at the bottom of the pyramid is that people are like, let's just give them English and have some translator. And then, there's such
doesn't work.
Doesn't work. So with these dialects, we still need to do the audio. And then some even that have AI, there's always accents, there's always differences. So, on that side, we are utilizing it for the more, basic languages, English, French, but for a lot of the dialects, we're still capturing audio. But it can be utilized in so many other ways as well.
So I think you've fallen in love with South Africa and Africa. You've been here for over 20 years. And I think your transition in your career, even though it is very much in the fintech space, it's still very much linked to giving back, the NGO side of things and the heart of what you do. I don't think you'll ever lose that. So obviously that is career-wise. I think you've been nominated a hell of a lot for women in business and a lot of those awards. You want to touch on some of those? Because I think it's aspirational for young women, who are starting their careers to say, jump on a plane, go to Australia or China or Africa and just get involved. And I think that is a big thing. So your career's led you to be nominated for these awards. Talk me through some of them, because, I've obviously read a few of them, and there's some, really elite nominations and awards that you have won.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because there's this kind of conversation in the ecosystem around should founders really be going after any of these, or, some you have to get nominated or apply or whatever, and some look at it as a distraction. And I do think that they are important though, and especially sort of peer-led ones, because it is, I guess earlier this year, I received the 2025 Tech Innovator of the Year Award with Wired for Women. And Telecom had sponsored it. It was a large event in Joburg. And to be honest, the road of entrepreneurship is a very tough road. Yeah. So I'm talking a lot about the great and, how many people we've reached and the impact we're having, but it's not been easy. And I think that's entrepreneurs do need to realize that when they go into the space, that, we've basically bootstrapped because we're a first mover, because we're not technically fintech, we're ed tech, which is very underfunded in the continent. And because a lot of investors are follower, not in a bad way, but, they like to see others come on board before they do. It's been a really rough road. So when I did receive this award earlier this year, I was surprised how much it did mean. Yeah. I actually, they had to call my name a few times because I wasn't really expecting it. But I ended up after, I was staying with a good friend of mine in Joburg, who's very good at, she's always start pushing your brand more and do this. And I'm not great at that. And so she made me sit down and actually write a post on it in LinkedIn. And my co-founder actually just read it a little while ago when I made him, but it was kind of a story of our 6 years, where, we've alternated, both of us at one stage wanting to give up and the other one would push. And, it's been this battle, but to be recognized, especially externally in such a in
such a large platform.
it is actually super valuable. So that's really been nice. I'm quite honored when I go back for the 15th reunion for Oxford. One of the Oxford professors, head of entrepreneurship and innovation, she started an inspiring female founder series. So she's doing a case study on us and my journey, which is launching that week, which will be great as well.
If you don't tell your story, no one knows of the struggles, and also it's inspiring to understand the journey and where you've come from. And, it gives, inspiration to young women out there to just don't give up, I think. If there were maybe some learnings from that, and if you could maybe just give me 3 pointers during that journey of, like, don't give up. Yes, it's tough. What is that for you?
Number 1 is definitely get good at failing.
Okay.
And, or you could look at it in a more positive way and say failing is not failing, because
it's just learning.
You'll get rejected a million times. That's part of the journey. You can't get affected by it. If you are, I mentored an amazing woman. I work with a lot of organizations, Further Impact and SAB Foundation, and I did some work with Womb Hub and a few others. And there was a female entrepreneur who was doing a great job, but she put all her eggs in one basket, and she really wanted this one thing to come off, and it didn't come off. And I didn't hear from her for a while, and I kept going after her. And long story short, I ended up at an event, and I saw her, and I was like, and we had a long talk about that is one rejection of what will, and not to be negative, but what will be many that leads to your win and your success, right? So you can't get stumped over one person. Look at any of the, self-made billionaires out there. They were rejected by hundreds of investors before they got their first money. So I guess I'd say, don't, three learnings is, failing is not failing. Persistence and tenacity. And 3 is don't lose yourself. Keep the balance.
Absolutely. I think talking about balance, so it leads on really nicely. So you're a mom of 2. They are still relatively young. I think with your business, there's a lot of travel involved. How do you manage that?
It's all about who you marry. I don't like to toot his horn too much, but I married a great guy who believes that it's 50-50, right? And that mutual success, mutual parenting. So he travels a lot, I travel a lot. We basically send calendar invites to each other, and whoever gets it in first is the one who, can travel on that date. But really it's about, women, we're in 2025 now. Like, women should not shoulder the home, should not, he cooks every night. We share responsibilities, and I think that super important. A lot of, I'm panelist, and involved in a lot of these women in tech or, female entrepreneurial panels and sessions and stuff. And it's always just women there. Yeah. And I always say, like, let's get men in the room, because we actually, this is a conversation
we should all be having
for all of us. Yeah. And the way that men can help, there's, is to share that load and to honor and the kind of the journey that their wife is also taking in the career.
Absolutely. And I've always been pro empowering women and all of that. But the thing is, I have a son, so why would I not want to empower men in the same breath? And I think that is an important characteristic. A lot of people get, put on this path of I must empower women and pro women. I don't think it's necessarily what we need to focus on. We need to empower everyone.
Absolutely. And our boys are super important. My oldest is a boy, and I think I've been teaching him since he was a baby to be a good husband,
Exactly.
like just, and he sees his father, and he sees what it means to, be partners,
Absolutely.
and I think that's super important.
What do the next couple of years look like for you?
It's a very good question. I was contemplating it even on the way over here.
Yeah.
So I'm very passionate about the African ecosystem, early stage ecosystem. I have been involved, but also watching from the sidelines for the last decade plus as the investor ecosystem has been building, and it's still nascent. So I feel for years, we've been, actually, the Minister of Youth in Rwanda said it best. Dr. Abdullah said, for years we've been investing in entrepreneurs, and we've been investing in entrepreneurial support organizations.
Yeah.
And that's great. We've done some great work, and we need to do that. But until we build the investor community, and that's not just VC, that's all types of money, right? Impact funds, foundations, all types of money. These entrepreneurs that are doing these great things are never going to be able to grow and flourish. So I've been lucky enough to engage with an organization called Included VC. Started by a wonderful lady in 2019, and her co-founders at Notion. And she started Included VC to create representation in the VC sector.
Okay.
Right? So it can't just be one look that's investing, right? So how do we get people and help them break into that sector? So they've now had they have fellows at over 140 funds around the world, and diversity of all, gender, sexual orientation, upbringing, socioeconomic, all of that. The first stage of the application, you don't send in a CV. Some have gone to college, some have not, some have, and we've just launched it here in Africa, which I'm really excited about. We actually literally just finalized the first fully African cohort yesterday / this morning.
Amazing.
Which will kick off in the next couple weeks. And these are aspiring investors who, but from all over the continent. And the byproduct of that is that entrepreneurs from these less focused on markets will finally have access, that Whisper networks will be more mixed and from all over the place. So we have some amazing partners in the investment community who have seen this opportunity and enabled this opportunity to create the next generation of investors. And so I really want to somehow be part of this in the years moving forward, is, making Africa, making the opportunity to do amazing things and create amazing companies in Africa more plausible, and to support the entrepreneurs in 54 countries, not just in the big four.
Well, good luck with that project, and who knows, maybe in a year or two's time you're back in that chair and having a conversation about that. So Natalie, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. It's been hugely insightful, and I look forward to having you back in a couple of years' time.
Thanks so much. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.